concerned with this because I think that it's become a fashion. Okay, the transgender definition has become a kind of convenient label for young people who may simply feel alienated. Okay, culturally for many other reasons. Okay, so that in the 1950s they might have become a beatnik. In the 1960s they might have become a hippie and taken mind-expanding drugs. Okay, and so today you're encouraged to think that your alienation is because you're not totally identifying with your particular inherited gender definition. So I'm very concerned about this. I think that a lot of it, I think that the collaboration of the bureaucratic machinery with it has to do with the assault on masculinity. Okay. Okay. So you see, gender doesn't really exist. It's not really polarity. I mean, everything's all about expanding women's rights, but also terminating men. Okay, and defining men out of existence. Masculinity is by definition toxic. Okay? Masculinity doesn't exist. You see, this is the proof of it. And now I began all my studies. My book Sexual Personae began as a dissertation at Yale graduate school on androgyny. I've always been fascinated, attracted to the subject of androgyny, and that's what the sexual persona is. I explored it in history, but the more I explored it, I realized that historically, the movement toward androgyny occurs in late phases of culture. Okay, as a civilization is starting to unravel. Okay, and that you can find it again and again and again through history in the Greek art. Okay, you can see it happening. All of a sudden, okay, there's a kind of the sculptures of handsome nude young men athletes that used to be very robust. Okay, in the archaic period, suddenly began to seem like wet noodles. Okay, toward the end. Okay.
All right, so I want to talk about Camille Paglia's, the lady Camille Paglia, and what she said. Now, this young lady identifies as herself as a feminist, a homosexual feminist. So she's not a right-wing Christian or anything, but she, interesting enough, in clips I'm going to show in this video, I played one already, where she just talks about how the whole androgyny thing is associated with late-stage society. Now, we have been the United States has been doing the whole androgyny thing for a while now. There was some stuff in regards to that in the 80s. You heard Charlie Murphy talk about this. Eddie Murphy's brother talked about this when talked about how this was cool back in the 80s, and this kind of was, but then it died off, and then now it's back, but it's back in a much different form with the whole trans thing, because it wasn't a trans thing back in the 80s at all, because it wasn't really acceptable to be gay in a lot of places in the 1980s. But anyways, this is associated, let's just talk about how this is associated with late stage society. So reason why I think it's associated with late stage society when it's openly okay to be androgynous is because we openly abandoned the human design. All right, and the human design is the fundamental aspect of what we base morality on, because our design determines how it's healthiest for us to function. And one of the things when we talk about morality is if something's wrong is how is it hurting somebody. Well, if you don't understand the design, you won't know how something is hurting or something is destructive. When I say hurt, I mean destructive. I don't necessarily mean it's necessarily causing physical pain, even though that's often a byproduct of something being destructive. It's a signal of something being destructive sometimes. But anyways, now we're just overly invested in feelings and just ignore the design and nature's design for us. So in early stage societies, if you abandon nature's design for you and go off the rails, then you won't be able to build much. And nature's design for men is to build and protect men and have a large provision role. And for women, is to be the nurturer. Now, this is not necessarily to say that women will just stay home and do nothing, because in early stage societies, you can't afford that to happen. I mean, look at if you look at really, really poor areas, both men and women work, but the woman does have more of the nurturing role and is more the homemaker and things of this nature. Anyways, with that being said, we've just it just seems like we've abandoned the human design. And when you abandon the human design, this is when you can abandon morality, either because you're not worried about what's destructive or constructive towards the design, and therefore you can destroy the design. Therefore, you can hurt the human design. Therefore, this is the fundamental basis of what can be immoral. All right. All right, this is a fundamental aspect. There's a little bit more to something being immoral than what we call immoral. What we consider to be immoral, it's a little bit more to immorality than whether it hurts somebody or not. But this is or whether something's destructive to human design or not. But this is the very beginning of it. So, therefore, you have these societies and then she talks about I'm gonna just play you the next clip, and then I'm gonna just go into this a little further.
Noodles, okay, toward the end, okay, and that the people who live in such periods, a late phase of culture, whether it's the Hellenistic era, whether it's the Roman Empire, whether it's the mauve decade of Oscar Wilde in the 1890s, whether it's Weimar Germany, people who live in such times, okay, feel that they're very sophisticated, they're very cosmopolitan, okay, homosexuality, heterosexuality, so what, anything goes, and so on, all right, but from the perspective of historical distance, okay, you can see that it's a culture that no longer believes in itself, okay, and then what you invariably get are people who are convinced of the power of heroic masculinity, okay, on the edges, whether they're the Vandals and the Huns, okay, or whether they're the barbarians of ISIS, okay, you see them, starting to mass on the outsides of the culture, and that's what we have right now. That there is a tremendous and rather terrifying disconnect between the infatuation with the transgender movement in our own culture and what's going on out there, okay, all right, and so I mean, that's why I'm concerned. I feel it's ominous. Okay? I question whether the transgender choice is indeed genuine in every single case. But what concerns me is when well-meaning adults, believe that they're helping people by making it easier some permanent change in the body from which there is no going back.
All right, so she talked about the men being drawn like wet noodles. All right, now here's the thing: when it comes to the men that you want in society, all right, in order for a man to be what he needs to be, you want a high testosterone man, which is going to probably, like, those are the men who will be the best protectors, and those will be the men who will probably gravitate towards building and want to provide and things of this nature. But also within that aggressive nature, like within the protective nature. And then the men who like to build, like to break things and things of this nature. But within that protector nature, you're going to have the men like you're going to need aggression, and that aggression is what you're going to need to protect, and it's going to want to dominate the thing that you're protecting from. And then in that thing is also going to want to dominate other things like other men, and the easiest men to dominate are the men who act like women. Now, she talks about the trans phenomenon being towards the kids and how it's messed up, but I'm not really going that direction right now. I'm just talking about how people are just it becomes real androgynous because people are just going with their feelings. First, because it's just like once you abandon the human design, then where are you going to go with your feelings? And our design determines how it's actually healthiest for us to function. But if we abandon the design, then we're not about what's healthy or what is healthiest for us to design. You're about how the design feels, and you're willing to do anything towards the design. Which I guess I am going to go towards the transgender children thing, because it's about how the child it's not about what's healthiest for the child. It's about how the child feels, right? It's like you're serving your feelings despite your design, instead of using your feelings as a signal of whether something is wrong with the design or not. So if your child says, if I said that if someone wanted to, if someone wanted to cut their arms and legs off, we'll say that's not normal. But if someone wants to mutilate their genitals or whatever, we'd be like, well, that's just how they feel, less indulgence. You see, this is what happens when you develop, when you abandon the human design. When it comes to when you abandon nature's design for things and you just go by how you feel, which is what this is. So men become more like females and females become more like men. They don't honor masculinity. They don't honor femininity. She talks about the attack on masculinity, but that's really an attack on femininity too, because she's talking about expanding women's rights, but it's expanding, I guess it's that, but it's more like, but it's not even, and it's not even, and then it's just messed up, because even when expanding women's rights, they're expanding the trans rights in spite of the women, and then it's just a whole hot mess. But anyways, Yeah, these people think they're so intellectual and smart, but society is deteriorating. These ideas are self-sustaining. All right, that's the one of the fundamental aspects of morality of something, whether something's moral and healthy. If it's self-sustaining, if it's not self-sustaining but it's falling apart, it needs to be subsidized. It needs to live off something else. It can't hold its own. It has to suck at the expense of something else. It's a fundamental aspect of whether something's immoral or not. So, like these, like when regards to intimacy, is really be like go with how you feel instead of what's best. That's how you got STDs. That's how you have the gender war. That's how you got a lot of hurt people because people are just out there serving their feelings. Like, oh, I could just go with be as many women as I want. I could just be with as many men I want to. Now the woman can't pair bond. The men hurt all the kind of women's feelings. The woman is abusing, using the men. The men are using the women. It's a hot mess there. And then it'd be like, well, you shouldn't tell us what to do with our what's in our bedroom. But it doesn't stay in your bedroom because you get STDs and those things spread around. You have these kids. These kids end up hurting us, and we have to pay for these kids out of our own pockets. We just have to. And these neighborhoods are wrecked because these kids are raised with their fathers, and these men aren't raised to build; they're raised to terrorize. Right? A lot of these, if you look at a lot of these inner cities in the United States of America, these cities look horrible. These inner cities look horrible. The men aren't building these things. It's not because they're poverty. I mean, like poverty doesn't make the neighborhood. The neighborhood doesn't have to be dirty because it's poor. Neighborhood doesn't. I mean, it could be. There's a lot of times when poor people can't keep up their stuff as well as they can, and it can look fairly nice even though it's poor. Right? It's just not a care because it's just not a. Things are just out of order. Right? This is the best way to put it. Things are just out of order. It just reminds me of Romans 1 when he talks about the steadily decline of society. First, like you abandon God, and then they abandon nature's design, and then they get into hedonism. And first, it's just male heterosexual hedonism, and then it goes into same-sex hedonism. All right, this is as they abandon. It talks about them abandoning nature's design. All right, and people glorifying doing evil things. Right? And these people think they're so smart, but look at the fruit. Look at the fruit of what they're doing. Look at the fruit. Now, I mean, if you're so unhappy with yourself, you want to be the very opposite thing that you was born with. I mean, something's wrong with that. Normally, you'd be like, okay, what happened? Like, you would probably want to talk to the child, like, what's going on? What's going on here? Normally, like, if somebody wants to cut their faces or like cut their face or mutilate themselves or something like think they're ugly like that. Then normally you're like, okay, something's going on here. Is there something going on in the house? Is something going on in the environment with the other kids? What's going on? But instead we applaud this. All right. But anyways, yeah, she's right. This is not coming from a white wing person. This is a homosexual feminist, and her book is Sexual Persona of Sexual Persona. I should have it up on the screen. But anyways, that's really all I have to say about this. I need to read the book. It's a really long book. But anyways. That's all I have to say. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Peace.